What's up, Better at Chess Nation? What I'm about to show you will change the way you view some of your chess games from now on. This video is going to break down draw, stalemate, what it looks like, and why it happens in your games. I will show you some games where I got a draw or a stalemate, and what to look for so it doesn't happen to you ever again. Hopefully, even the greats stalemate a game or two in the championship rounds. Let's get into it. Draw is when both sides are in the endgame and are either equal in material, or neither side has enough to win the game. Stalemate is when one player who isn't in check also has no legal moves. And yes, stalemate is a form of draw. So what's the big deal? Glad you asked. Stalemate and draw are like fraternal twins. They are related, but they don't look exactly the same. It is important to know the other outcomes to the game of chess. You will win games, you will lose games, draw games, and stalemate games. Now, before we dig deeper into cause and effect, let's see what a draw and stalemate look like. Starting with draw, it is important to note that there are multiple ways to get to a draw. The first stems from even material. When two players have even material, no player has an advantage, so both players can agree to a draw. Pretty clean cut, right? Pay close attention here. What follows are two situations where things can get complicated. The first, when both players make the same move 3 times in a row, the game is declared a draw by rule. Remember this. I will bring this up later. There is also a 50-move rule, which is clearly meant for stubborn players like myself who have no advantage, none whatsoever, but still try to win the game anyway. It works as follows. Both sides are evenly matched. You go through a series of moves where there are no pieces taken. After move 50, for both sides, the game is declared a draw. Looks something like this. I can definitely see why somebody would say forget it and just accept the draw. Insufficient material. Insufficient material is just like the title says. Insufficient in material. Material, you need to checkmate your opponent. You can't checkmate when you only have these pieces. A king and a knight versus a king. A king and a bishop versus a king. Or a king versus a king. You need at least one other piece, for the last example, a rook or a queen, to get a checkmate. Okay, so why do draws and stalemates happen? A few reasons. A draw happens when two players are evenly matched. It happens when someone had an advantage but lost it and now both sides are even. A draw happens when you or your opponent can't gain an advantage over the other. Maybe you and your opponent aren't remotely even in skill, but you played a great game and it's a draw. Draws happen. So does stalemate. It is the yang to draws yin. The truth about stalemate is one player had an advantage and still didn't win the game. Stalemates are crushing because you literally draw a game you should have won. With a draw, after playing a few games, you realize how tough it is to win. It is more evenly matched than you thought. Chance of victory faded long before you realized it. Stalemate is different. It hurts more because you feel robbed of what is rightfully yours. The cause of stalemate, in my opinion, is control. Lack of self-control, aka ego, or less risky playing it too safe control, aka fear. This, of course, is putting lack of knowledge, aka ignorance, aside. As unmotivating as that sounds, don't rush to quit chess just yet. I hope you are still with me because I'm about to show you how to use what you just learned to your advantage. While I can't guarantee this will win you the game, you will be better equipped to use these tactics to your advantage. Remember this forever. Chess is situational. When your opponent plays towards the right position or situation and you have the right knowledge, chess becomes predictable. As you will see later in this series, having the right knowledge is crucial to your success at winning chess. Okay, tip number 1, the 3 move rules. If you are down in pieces or victory is less and less likely, the 3-move rule can aid in the right situation. Take no shame in drawing a game you can't win, especially if you are in control of how that happens. Tip number 2, create an even situation. When you or your opponent have even pieces, especially major pieces, keep them out of harm's way. If you can create an even setup when no one, including you, can really gain an advantage, you can draw the game. This is more of an art than science. When you both have a king and queen, it is easier to see the draw. One player has to sacrifice the queen so that only kings remain, or sacrifice a piece that leaves your opponent with insufficient material to checkmate. Winning at chess is hard. It is when it seems impossible that you should consider a draw. Tip number 3, avoiding stalemate. Knowing what to look for in the final stage of the game will determine if you win or possibly stalemate the game away. Let's look at a game of mine. Here I am playing as black, and I am down to a king and a pawn. My opponent is well on their way to winning this game. So they thought. My opponent plays h3, attacking my pawn on g4. I have nothing better to move but to take it. G versus h3. My opponent begins to push his pawns to get a queen. I don't blame him. I would have done the same thing. Fast forward to me chasing the rook with my king because they're too busy distracted with pushing the pawn, and we get to here. My opponent's pawn made it all the way to g7, ready to go to g8 and promote to a queen. I make a last-ditch effort for his rook. My opponent decides to move the rook to b8, and something interesting occurred to me. I was in the perfect diagonal alignment with where my opponent was going to promote. If I move into the corner, my king would have nowhere to go. The rook on the b file is cutting off all other options. It was a matter of getting my opponent to take my pawn from there. It was 100% a risk. I couldn't guarantee my opponent would fall for it. I took the chance because my opponent had been so focused on promoting all this time. Why should I expect any different? And so I moved my king into the corner, and my opponent promoted to a queen. Half the battle was won right then and there. I pushed my pawn to check the king, and the king took the bait. Stalemate. So, what went wrong for my opponent? Answer in the comment section below if you know. If you want to know the answer, check out my analysis video of this very game.